Accused number one in the case of the theft of around $500,000 from President Cyril Ramaphosa's Phala Phala Farm will today continue with his bail application in the Bela Bela Magistrate's Court in Limpopo. Imanuwela David started with his bail application yesterday. Let's now speak to SABC News reporter Pimani Baloyi, who's joining us from inside the courtroom. Pimani, good morning. Thank you so much for making time for us. So yesterday, Imanuwela was clear that he intends to plead not guilty with regards to these charges. But we also heard that apparently, according to the state's investigation, that before he broke into the president's Phala Phala farm, he had broken into a farm next to the president's farm.
Good morning, Aldrin, and good morning to our viewers. Yes, indeed, that is the information that we had here inside the Bela Bela Magistrate Court yesterday when Mr. Imanuwela David took the witness stand in order to apply for bail. But shortly after that, we saw the investigating officer, Lieutenant Colonel Ludi Schnell, taking to the same witness stand to oppose that bail. Some of the main takings from Mr. David's testimony was that, number one, he says it's not a flight risk and that he does not believe. Aldrin, power just came back. There was load shedding here from 7 up until 9. So power just came back. You might see the lights in front of you. But as I was stating, Aldrin, Mr. David says he is not a flight risk, even though he has a valid passport and he has relatives in Namibia that he says he visits almost once a year. If he has enough money, he would even go more than once. He says that he has no knowledge of this crime and he believes that by the end of the trial he will be cleared of any wrongdoing regarding to this. But Mr. Schnell, Lieutenant Colonel Schnell, when he took the witness stand, stated that for the state, Mr. David is a flight risk because, number one, he has 2 previous convictions. The first one was public drinking somewhere in Gauteng. The second one, he was once detained in Namibia after illegally crossing the border into Namibia, where he was arrested and detained and later sent back, deported back into South Africa. So for that reason, he is a flight risk. But secondly, there's a lot, the state could not verify his addresses because he's given them a lot of addresses, some in Rustenburg, some in Cape Town, and some here in Bela Bela. And he also spoke about relatives in Namibia. So stating at this point, the addresses that he's given them, they were unable to verify them, so they do not know where he stays. But him having been arrested for flying the country, getting into another country illegally, means he could do it again should he be granted bail. And the state stating that they could find paper trail of transactions that he made. According to the investigating officer, Mr. David deposited large sums of money into his own personal account as well as the accounts of his relatives shortly after that robbery. And the state is very clear to say, according to them, there was $580,000 that were stolen, and Mr. David could be traced with some of the amount. So right now we expect court to start now that electricity has come back to this court building, and we expect Mr. David to be brought in from the holding cells, where we expect these 2 co-accused, the Joseph siblings, to come in through the civilian door because they have been released on bail. Aldrin?
Yeah, let's quickly speak about the allegations around the paper trail that you are speaking about that has been made by the investigating officer. What exactly is it that Imanuwela David is being accused of buying with the money that he allegedly stole from the president's farm?
One of the items that he allegedly bought is a house, Aldrin, to the value of about 980,000 rand, which they say he bought shortly after the robbery, but also later shortly sold it to a Namibian national. And police say they were not able to find out how much he sold that house for. But there are also vehicles that are registered in his name that the state says he bought shortly after that robbery. But when he took to the witness stand, Mr. David said he does not own any vehicle, and the police say this is information that they were able to verify on the police system, that there were cars registered in his name. But there were also another rental unit that he could have co-owned with an ex-partner in Cape Town that was also linked to him, that could have been purchased shortly after this brazen robbery happened at the President's Farm. So the state had a very long affidavit that we expect Lieutenant Colonel Ludi Schnell to continue reading into record, that would also reveal further information in terms of what other transactions could have been done shortly after this brazen robbery at the President's farm. Aldrin?
Finally, Pimani, do we know whether there's any intention at all to call any of the authorities from Namibia to testify on this matter, considering, of course, that there were reports that Imanuwela David was arrested in Namibia for entering the country without the necessary documents?
The state at this point, Aldrin, like as members of the media, you can imagine there's a lot of media houses that are interested in this case. We've been asking to see that docket, to see who might be the next witness that's called in. The state has been cagey. And I must also add, part of that was when Lieutenant Colonel Schnell took to the witness stand, he asked that he not be shown because this is a high-profile case. He doesn't want to be his face to be pasted all over the story, which defense stated that this objection should have been stated when that media application was heard in this court as a condition attached to it, but the magistrate ultimately granted that application that he must not be shown. So at this point, Aldrin, the fact of the matter is, as members of the media, we have not been able to see the charge sheet. We've not been able to find out what other witnesses are expected to be brought in, but the Namibia arrest was largely mentioned when Lieutenant Colonel Schnell was on the witness stand. So we would anticipate that, somebody would come during the trial to verify that. Aldrin?